Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to objectively explore what is honestly one of the most fascinating shifts of our lifetime. Is India actually becoming the world's next superpower? We'll break down exactly why almost every major global entity out there, we're talking everyone from massive multinational corporations to giant governments, is paying such close attention to India right now. It's just a story of incredible momentum. And it touches literally everything, from global supply chains right down to the tech you use every single day. Okay, let's dive into this massive contrast we have here. Just a few decades ago, the global perception of India was pretty much just that of a struggling, developing nation. But today? Well, today, we're looking at one of the fastest growing major economies on the planet. We're talking towering financial districts, massive manufacturing plants, and digital payment systems that are honestly leading the world. India has become this definitive global tech hub and, yeah, a legit space power. So the central question we really need to figure out today is, how exactly did one country transform so quickly? Like, how do you go from a stagnant economy to a total global powerhouse in such a compressed time frame? Was it just one lucky break, or maybe a perfect storm of trends? Well, actually, the answer begins way, way before modern India even existed. Section 1. The historical anchor, from ancient wealth to colonial rule. To truly wrap our heads around India's modern rise, we really have to look at its complex past. Back in the ancient era, India was this phenomenally wealthy hub of global commerce. Thanks to its prime connections to the Silk Road and its total dominance in Indian Ocean trade, it was an absolute economic titan. But fast forward to the 1800s, and British colonial rule brought about severe deindustrialization, basically systematically draining that wealth. And that deeply shaped the incredibly challenging starting point they faced as a newly independent nation back in 1947. Section 2. The inflection point. The 1991 economic reforms. So, following independence, India's economy was heavily managed by the state. For decades, they operated under this highly restrictive system known as the license Raj. Imagine needing government approval for almost every single business decision you make. What you want to manufacture, exactly how much to produce, even what you're going to charge. It was a total labyrinth of elaborate regulations, licenses, and red tape that severely constrained entrepreneurship and just killed business growth. This system kept the economy pretty much stagnant, at least until a severe financial crisis forced a massive pivot. And that brings us to the real turning point, which had in 1991. Staring down that severe financial crisis, India was basically forced to shift from that closed, planned system over to an open market framework. These 1991 reforms brought in widespread liberalization, mass privatization, and finally opened the nation's doors to global investment. Almost overnight, Indian businesses could actually breathe, innovate, and compete on a truly global scale. Section 3. The modern engines, the technology and infrastructure revolution. Now that 1991 liberalization totally laid the foundation. It paved the runway for India to become the modern tech and infrastructure powerhouse we see today. Just think about the pillars of the modern Indian economy. First off, you have Bengaluru, which emerged as this massive IT and global outsourcing hub, exporting software solutions all over the world. But behind every software engineer, there is a much bigger story at play. It's the story of digital India and digital public infrastructure. The biggest standout here is definitely UPI, the Unified Payments Interface. UPI has completely revolutionized digital payments, making instant transactions accessible to literally hundreds of millions of citizens and businesses. Factor in their rapidly growing ambitions in AI and semiconductor manufacturing, and man, you are looking at a deeply modernized economy. But here's the thing. India's biggest advantage wasn't even its software ecosystem or its massive digital adoption. It's actually their demographic dividend. See, while many major economies in the West and East are totally struggling with aging populations and shrinking labor pools, India boasts an incredibly low median age. They literally have one of the youngest populations in the entire world. This provides them with a massive, highly energetic workforce and a huge consumer base right at the exact moment their economy is scaling up. It is a real game changer. And to support that massive demographic and economic boom, the physical infrastructure is just racing to catch up. We're seeing huge, massive investments in high-speed expressways and these dedicated freight corridors crisscrossing the entire nation. Then you've got the Make in India initiative, which is rapidly expanding manufacturing hubs and ports. And crucially, this is super important. There's immense investment pouring into renewable energy and EV projects, because obviously they need to ensure this long-term economic growth is powered sustainably. Section 4. India on the world stage, geopolitical reality.
Because of this simultaneous economic and technological explosion, India is building some incredible diplomatic leverage. They are masterfully navigating this multipolar world of ours. For example, they're flexing leadership in the G20, while somehow uniquely balancing active engagements across completely different groups like the Quad and BRICS. Combine that diplomatic balancing act with their expanding, cost-effective space missions, some really serious defense modernization, and their strategic appeal as multinational companies look to diversify global supply chains away from other regions, and, well, India has essentially made itself an indispensable global partner.
The numbers really speak for themselves here. Metrics like rapid GDP expansion, surging export growth, and massive startup funding firmly position India as one of the fastest-growing major economies on Earth. But surprisingly, while all these economic and geopolitical realities are absolutely staggering, India's greatest challenge might actually also be its greatest opportunity. Section 5. The friction. Obstacles to true superpower status. Now, history constantly reminds us that rapid growth never happens in a vacuum, right? India's phenomenal economic triumphs, the booming tech hubs, the highly successful space program, that surging GDP we just talked about, these are objectively countered by some pretty massive structural hurdles. For every successful space mission, there is friction on the ground. We're talking stark income inequality, intense regional disparities, and severe water stress brought on by super rapid urbanization. On top of that, there are massive gaps in education and healthcare access for millions of people, and all of this is compounded by the looming threat of climate change. So what's the ultimate takeaway here? Well, it's that true global superpower status won't just be handed over based on sheer GDP size. It's going to depend entirely on how successfully the nation solves these deep systemic challenges. To sustain all this incredible momentum, India has to address income inequality, implement genuinely sustainable environmental practices, and drastically expand education and economic opportunity across both its massive urban centers and its rural villages. This story of India's rise definitely isn't a closed book. Honestly, it's being written right now. Driven by decades of reforms, some really bold innovation, and an unbelievably young population, India is undoubtedly on the rise. But the ultimate question remains, and it's a big one. Will India simply join the existing club of global superpowers, or will it completely rewrite the rules of global dominance for the 21st century?
Thanks for watching World Decoded. Make sure to like and share, subscribe, and stay curious.